Now, we've already spoken before that Paul's words, he said that he had stated that all things were made, by Christ and for him. So there's nothing that Satan's world can overpower. There's nothing that's going to outwit God. Okay, so there is no ingredient that you use on this earth other than a complete imagination that has nothing to really support it. That did not come from God. We can't even make a blade of grass. We can't do anything. We mix things up. We mix things together. We confuse things, but we certainly are not creators. We're graced and gifted the ability to use what's already in front of us. We are the creation. So unfortunately, when the ego gets in there, it's amazing how people can call themselves creators, but now we call those inventors. And that's because you deceived yourself, because invent means to deceive. So it's not a good word. And so in the world of make-believe, don't get too afraid of it. Caesar doesn't win on this one, and his leader Satan doesn't win on this one. They basically have a surname, and because they consider that these legal surnames, the body corporate, these titles they assigned, these Babylonian titles, are basically tax names. Now, they're only taxable on someone who touches it. It can't tax itself. Caesar doesn't tax himself, but he taxes someone who crosses into his jurisdiction and says, I want private gain out of that public title. So in that situation, it's no longer a tax shelter. The actual surname is a foundation support to the legal, but your private God-given name isn't supposed to be in there. So on its own, it will shelter you as long as you don't cross the line, because it remains in Caesar's jurisdiction. Caesar doesn't tax himself, and he doesn't tax his own name. He taxes trespassers on it, who come from a truth jurisdiction and try to walk truth and make it work in fiction. Truth doesn't work in fiction. So the foundation basically is what everything rests on. So even in the world of fiction, if you've got truth in you and you understand this, you don't give truth into fiction. Why would you try to support fiction with truth? How does that make any sense? Why would you put truth inside something that is an imagination? Why would you breathe life into it? Now, if Caesar said this is the assigned name at time of birth that was placed on you without your consent, well, then let him have it. Let him have it. It's his. It's not yours. So how could you pay tax on it unless there's something that he could privately attach to you without your consent? How could it happen? It's just like, I'm just trying to figure out where people are coming from on this. They seem to want to put their given name in there that belongs to God, render it to Caesar, and then feel that somehow Caesar's doing the wrong thing and that somehow God's abandoned them. Even God is giving you a tax shelter with truth, because you'll see that fiction can't harm a man. But when a man believes he's a fiction, well, it can harm him, because now he's deceived himself. Why would Paul say, if a man think of himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth his own mind? Why would that be there? Why would Paul have renderings like that in Scripture? Because Paul was very aware of the legal fiction of the Romans. So the surname is the only legal foundation in their document. But if you want to go and interfere with their foundation, go ahead. As I said to one individual who kept on emailing me absurd things about how he thinks he can still play in the fiction and should be able to go out and make a living or earn a living. And I thought only God can make a living. Why would you try to make a living? You are living. So you'd have to be trying to make something live that isn't living. Well, of course, a dead body corporate in the legal world, the surname is their dead body corporate, the only legal person known to their law. It's only the surname. But your consent is taking on the burden of it, taking on what is not yours, and then saying, I'd like to pay for it. Well, what a great game Satan's got on that one. Because he's got everybody deceived and they're willing to pay a debt that doesn't belong to them. He started the debt. He's part of the active state in this inducement also. His deception game has never changed. So therefore, he's responsible. Leave the state responsible for their own inducement. But if you put your given name in there, then you're consenting. And consent removes mistake. Therefore, you won't have a tax shelter because the surname is the tax. When he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar, the tribute to he who calls for the tribute, well, the surname is Caesar's tribute. That's his assigned name. He doesn't see your given name. Remember the three Hebrews in Daniel. They were assigned Babylonian names. Do you think Nebuchadnezzar or the Babylonian kings cared about their Hebrew names? He gave them another name. So he didn't communicate to them in their Hebrew name. He communicated to them in their legal Babylonian name. Do you think Daniel was paying tax? Do you think the three Hebrews were paying tax? But there was a dissenting group that wanted to frame them and say they were going against the king. This has not changed. That is Caesar's tribute, that last name. So you just render to him what is due, not what is undue. If you're giving him something undue, then you're succumbing to undue influence. And therefore, you're believing that that legal name, that surname, is your vessel. It's your body then. You believe it's your body and it's Caesar's body. And unfortunately right now, people, because they believe that that body belongs to them, every time they're communicated on it and told to do something like take a medical treatment that they probably shouldn't do, I'm not going to say probably, I would say should not do, but in the world of Caesar, those who believe that it's their body corporate, they will actually put something in it because they've been deceived to believe it's their vessel. And it's not their vessel. It's not their ship. So the state is the shipper, and unfortunately you've become the carrier. And now you will be the carrier of whatever deceasement it places in you by your own consent. But his legal name is the tax. So you've paid the tax every time you've only given the last name. That is the tax. And therefore, it's a permanent tax shelter because it's never taxed. It always shelters you because you've done the right thing. But if you want to privately claim it and think you can go and pay your own way, go make a living, go ahead. As I said, don't let me stand in the way of your own success.